Every day, millions of us spend hours trapped in these metal boxes crawling through concrete jungles. Traffic jams, air pollution, endless noise. It's a system we all just accept, but what if we didn't have to? These cities banned cars, or never allowed them to begin with. No traffic, no smog, and people happier than ever. So how did they make it work, and why aren't more cities doing the same? For the last century, cars have ruled our cities. They shaped how we build roads, where we live, even how we think about distance. In most places, getting around without one isn't just inconvenient, it's impossible. We were sold the dream that cars meant freedom, but today, for many, cars feel more like a trap. The average commuter spends 54 hours a year stuck in traffic. That's more than 2 full days of your life, just idling. And it's not just time. Transportation accounts for nearly a quarter of global carbon dioxide emissions. Cars choke our air, dominate our streets, and make cities louder, dirtier, and less human. But a few cities decided to do something different. They asked a simple question: what if cities were built for people, not cars? Here are some cities that have found a way to prove you don't need cars. Today, Amsterdam is known as a cyclist's paradise with calm canals, thousands of bikes, barely a car in sight. But it wasn't always like this. After World War II, Amsterdam followed the same trajectory as many other Western cities. Urban planners, inspired by the car-centric American dream, tore down historic neighborhoods to make way for highways and parking lots. Streets that had once been full of children playing and neighbors chatting became clogged with noisy traffic and fumes. By the late 1960s, car ownership had surged, and with it, tragedy. Traffic deaths were rising sharply, and an alarming number of those killed were children walking or cycling to school. That heartbreak sparked a movement that would change the city forever. In 1971, a grassroots campaign called Stop de Kindermoord, meaning Stop the Child Murder, was started, uniting parents, activists, and ordinary residents who demanded safer streets and a new vision for urban life. Their message was powerful and impossible to ignore. Cities should be for people, not machines. The Dutch government and local authorities eventually listened. Instead of building more highways, Amsterdam chose a different path literally. The city began removing through traffic from residential neighborhoods, narrowing car lanes, and transforming streets into shared spaces. They built an extensive network of dedicated bike lanes, re-engineered intersections for cyclists' safety, and restricted cars from central areas altogether. Parking became limited, but public transport and cycling flourished. The result was a quiet revolution on 2 wheels. Today, about 40% of all trips in Amsterdam are made by bicycle. The air is cleaner, the traffic noise is softer, and the streets are alive, filled with families, friends, and a constant rhythm of pedaling. Cycling isn't just a way to get around, it's part of Amsterdam's identity, woven into its culture and daily life. Children cycle to school in the mornings, professionals commute in suits and dresses, and grandparents glide gracefully alongside them. What makes Amsterdam remarkable is that none of this happened overnight. It took decades of persistence, political courage, and steady investment in infrastructure to undo the car-first mistakes of the past. Each new bike path and pedestrian zone was a step toward reclaiming the city for its people. And once Amsterdammers experienced safer streets, quieter neighborhoods, and a newfound sense of freedom, they never wanted to go back. Amsterdam didn't just prove that a modern city can thrive without cars, it showed the world that doing so can make urban life more joyful, equitable, and human. If Amsterdam proved that biking could work, Copenhagen perfected it. The Danish capital isn't just bike-friendly, but bike-obsessed. Every morning, streams of cyclists glide through the city like a living river on 2 wheels. More than 60% of residents commute by bike each day, through sunshine, rain, or even snow. Copenhagen's guiding philosophy is simple: design for humans first, machines second. That mindset has reshaped every corner of the city. Rather than squeezing bikes into spaces left over by cars, the city flipped the equation, giving priority to cyclists, pedestrians, and public life. Over the past few decades, Copenhagen has built more than 400 kilometers of dedicated bike lanes, including entire cycle superhighways that connect distant suburbs directly to the city center. These aren't just painted lines on the road, they're wide, elevated, and designed with smooth curves and gentle slopes, separated from both cars and pedestrians. Even the traffic lights are timed for cyclists, creating a green wave that lets them cruise across the city without stopping. And it's not just about infrastructure, but about culture. In Copenhagen, cycling isn't a lifestyle choice, it's simply how life works. Parents drop their children off at school on cargo bikes, professionals ride in suits, seniors pedal to the market. But behind this normalcy lies decades of vision and persistence. The transformation began in the 1960s when Copenhagen, like much of Europe, was being swallowed by cars. Streets grew noisy and unsafe, and public life began to disappear. Then came a bold experiment: The city banned most car traffic from its main shopping street, Strogate, creating one of Europe's first and longest pedestrian zones. Critics predicted disaster, that no one would come, that businesses would fail. But the opposite happened. Foot traffic soared, cafes spilled into the streets, and shops thrived. The city had rediscovered its soul. That success inspired a new way of thinking. Danish architect and urban designer John Gale began studying how people actually used public spaces, how they walked, where they paused, and when they lingered. The city stopped measuring how many cars passed through a street and started measuring how many people walked, sat, talked, and smiled. It was a quiet revolution in urban planning, measuring life instead of traffic. The results speak for themselves. Today, Copenhagen is one of the cleanest, safest, and happiest cities in the world. Its carbon dioxide emissions have dropped sharply, public health has improved, and residents consistently report high levels of satisfaction and well-being. The city streets, once choked with cars, are now filled with movement, conversation, and community. Copenhagen's achievement is about trust and respect. Cyclists, pedestrians, and drivers all share the city gracefully, each with their own space. It's proof that when a city is designed for people, not parking, everyone benefits. Now let's go north to Oslo, Norway, a city that didn't just reduce its dependence on cars, but dared to imagine life without them altogether. While Amsterdam and Copenhagen leaned into cycling, Oslo took an even bolder step. It removed cars entirely from its city center. In 2015, Oslo's leaders announced an ambitious and, to many, unthinkable goal: to make the entire downtown area car-free within just a few years. The reaction was immediate and fierce. Business owners feared customers would vanish, residents worried about accessibility and parking. Drivers accused the city of waging a war on cars. Even some planners doubted it could be done in a city long built around car use, with cold winters and hilly streets. But Oslo's city government held firm. They didn't simply ban cars overnight, but redesigned the city for people. Street by street, parking spaces were removed and replaced with bike racks, benches, trees, and playgrounds. Former parking lots became small parks. Roads that once funneled cars through the heart of the city were transformed into pedestrian plazas. Public transport like buses, trams, and the city's efficient metro system was expanded and made more reliable. At the same time, Oslo invested heavily in cycling infrastructure, building safe bike lanes even through its snowy winters, and introduced electric cargo bikes to help families and businesses adapt. The transition was gradual but relentless, with each step making the city a little quieter, cleaner, and more livable. By 2019, most of central Oslo was officially car-free, a transformation few believed possible. The results were immediate and striking. Traffic injuries and deaths fell dramatically. Just like in 2019, Oslo recorded 0 pedestrian or cyclist fatalities, a milestone few cities in the world can claim. Air pollution levels dropped sharply, improving public health and quality of life. And the economic fears? They proved unfounded. Instead of empty shops, local businesses saw a rise in retail sales as foot traffic increased and people spent more time enjoying the streets rather than driving through them. The change wasn't just physical, it was cultural. Oslo's center, once a noisy corridor for commuters, became a living room for the city's citizens, a place to walk, meet, eat, and breathe. Cafes spilled out onto former car lanes, street musicians filled public squares, families picnicked where cars once idled. Oslo's success proved something powerful. Removing cars doesn't make a city collapse, but helps it come alive. The fears that streets would empty out were replaced by the sound of conversation, laughter, and bicycle bells. The city didn't just ban cars. It invited community, creativity, and connection to take their place. So far, we've seen cities that took back their streets and proved we don't need cars to thrive, but they're not alone. Freiburg sits in the southwest corner of Germany, near the edge of the Black Forest. It's a small city of about 230,000 people, but its ideas are big. Back in the 1970s, citizens here protested against a proposed nuclear power plant. That moment changed the city forever. Instead of going down an industrial path, Freiburg decided to bet on renewable energy, public transport, and livable neighborhoods. They didn't just remove cars, they designed the entire city to make cars unnecessary. Freiburg's transport plan centers around 3 things: trams, bikes, and walking. Every home is within 500 meters of a tram stop. Streets prioritize public transport over private cars, and parking? It's pushed to the edges. Here, 70% of all trips happen without a car. The rest are mostly shared or electric. Nowhere is this clearer than in the district of Vauban, once a military base, now one of the world's most sustainable neighborhoods. Cars aren't banned outright in Vauban, but they are deeply discouraged. Residents who insist on owning one must park it in a designated garage outside the district and pay a hefty fee. Inside, streets belong to kids, walkers, and cyclists. In return, they produce streets that are alive with laughter, community, and greenery. Air pollution is among the lowest in Germany, and solar power provides much of the district's energy. Critics once said car-free cities would kill the economy. Freiburg proved the opposite. The city's green policies attracted researchers, startups, and eco-tourists. It became a global hub for clean energy. Public transport is reliable, affordable, and seamlessly integrated. A single ticket covers trams, trains, and buses across the region. For many residents, owning a car just doesn't make sense anymore. In Freiburg, sustainability isn't about sacrifice, it's about design and creating a city where the green choice is also the easy choice. Venice wasn't designed to be car-free, but it just always was. Built more than 1,000 years ago on a cluster of 118 small islands linked by over 400 bridges, its twisting canals and narrow alleyways made cars not just impractical, but impossible. What began as a quirk of geography became one of the world's most beautiful accidents, a living example of what happens when a city grows entirely on human terms. In Venice, transportation is delightfully simple. You walk or you float. Goods arrive by canal on small boats. Deliveries weave through the waterways before being carried by hand or cart through the narrow streets. Commuters, students, and tourists move the same way on foot. There are no traffic lights, no honking horns, no parking garages. The loudest sounds are footsteps on stone, the splash of water against gondolas, and the murmur of conversation drifting through open windows. This slower rhythm changes everything. Without the roar of engines or the rush of traffic, the city invites you to notice the world around you. You feel the texture of cobblestones, the echoes beneath ancient archways, the shifting light across the canals. You experience architecture and history at a walking pace, not from behind a windshield. Venice reminds us that cities were once built for connection, not congestion. Every bridge becomes a meeting place. Every piazza, no matter how small, turns into a shared living room where people gather, talk, and linger. Its design prioritizes people with their movement, their interactions, their senses. Of course, Venice faces serious challenges. Over-tourism, flooding, and population decline threaten its fragile balance. Many locals have been priced out or moved to the mainland, and the city grapples with how to preserve its authenticity while welcoming millions of visitors each year. Yet, even with these pressures, Venice remains a powerful reminder of what's possible. It shows that a city without cars doesn't have to be a futuristic vision. It can be a masterpiece from the past. Long before urban planners talked about 15-minute cities or walkable neighborhoods, Venice proved it could be done. Its beauty lies not only in its canals and palaces, but in its simple truth. When people, not cars, shape a city, life itself becomes the main attraction. In every successful city, the transformation began with small steps of a car-free weekend, a bike lane, and a single pedestrian street. Once people experienced the difference, they demanded more. Oslo didn't remove every car at once. It tested, adjusted, and expanded, one street at a time. Removing cars without improving transit doesn't work. Copenhagen invested in bike lanes. Freiburg built trams that connect everything. Oslo improved public transport before closing roads. When people have better, faster, and cheaper ways to get around, they will take them. You don't have to force behavior change, you just make the better option obvious. In most cities, cars take up more than half of public space. That's billions of square meters dedicated to machines that sit still 95% of the time. But when you give that space back to the people, it transforms. You get plazas, playgrounds, and cafes. Business owners often fear losing customers when cars go away. But almost everywhere, the opposite happens. When people walk, they stop, browse, and buy. In Oslo, retail sales rose after the car ban. In Copenhagen, cafes flourished. Car-free doesn't mean customer-free, but people-full. When the next generation grows up thinking a car isn't essential, that's when real change sticks. So if these cities are happier, healthier, and thriving, why aren't more cities following their lead? The answer, as always, is complicated. Car-centric infrastructure is deeply embedded. Decades of policy, lobbying, and urban planning decisions favor vehicles. In many cities, everything, including schools, jobs, homes, are spread out. Public transit doesn't reach far enough. For millions, driving isn't a choice, it's survival. So the challenge isn't just physical, but what if we redefine freedom, not as owning a car, but as not needing one? Urban planners around the world are starting to take notes. Paris is redesigning itself into a 15-minute city where everything you need is within a short walk or bike ride. Bogota has built hundreds of kilometers of bike lanes. Seoul is tearing down highways to restore rivers. Overall, when you remove cars, you don't just remove traffic, you remove stress, noise, and danger. You create a city that breathes again. A city designed for people is quieter, safer, and more equal. The air is cleaner, the streets are calmer, but the small interactions come back. And maybe that's the real reason these cities matter. Maybe the future of cities isn't about the next electric car or next highway. Maybe it's about returning to something we already know, that cities are made for people. But the question now is, which city will be next?